All right, today we're starting something big, a full Sega Game Gear restoration journey. I've collected a lot of Game Gears over the years. Some of these are rough, some of these are complete mysteries, but buried somewhere in here is the one we're gonna rescue first. This first episode is all about the hunt. We're gonna dig through this pile, find a promising unit, tear it down, clean it up, and try to figure out if it's even worth saving. Once we pick our candidate, the real restoration work begins. And with the help of our friends over at Handheld Legend, we're rebuilding this thing completely over the next few videos. We're talking a full overhaul. Fresh capacitors, brand new modern LCD, new shell and buttons, upgraded speakers, power board upgrades, full cleaning and restoration, all the quality of life mods that make a Game Gear feel new again. So let's jump into it. All right, let's start digging through the pile and see what we're working with. Before I even open anything up, there's a couple of quick checks I always do to figure out whether a Game Gear is worth restoring. And honestly, I think eventually all of these will get restored, but I want to try to find the best candidate for making the video today. So the first thing I like to look at is our battery compartments. Game Gears love to leak batteries, and that battery corrosion can leak down into the motherboard down underneath here. So I'm looking for minimal corrosion, minimal signs of damage to try to have us set up for the best possible candidate. That one actually looks pretty good. We'll put that in the maybe pile. You can kind of see there's a bit of it's not terrible, but there is some corrosion buildup, and since we've already found a couple that look pretty good, we'll go ahead and put this one aside and maybe make this in our plan B pile. This one here has quite a bit. It's quite a bit worse, I think. So the next step is I want to do a power test on the Game Gears. Instead of using the batteries, I'm going to use the 9-volt DC input that's on top of each Game Gear. This is kind of it's a strange test because we're not using the same path as the battery path, but I'm assuming that we're going to cover any of those repairs that need to be done down the line. And honestly, using this with my benchtop power supply is just a lot simpler. So this one comes on, but I did not see the screen come on at all. But at least it powers up. I really want to track down a model number VA1 Game Gear that has a model number VA1 motherboard. That's the revision that matches the capacitor kit that Handheld Legend sent me. So I hope one of these is a VA1. So what I think I'm going to do now is pull it apart, and we will we'll check out each one, do some more inspections of the motherboards, and take it from there. Today's video is sponsored by Handheld Legend, and if you mod or restore handhelds or consoles, you've got to check them out. These guys have everything: screens, shells, buttons, speakers, cap kits, power board parts, tools, accessories, literally everything you need. I use their parts all the time, and if you want the same upgrades I use on my channel, hit the link. It saves you money and it directly supports me and the channel. Big shout out to Handheld Legend for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back into it. These are super simple to take apart. There's one security bit that's the same style security bit Nintendo uses on their consoles. It's up here. And then all the rest are just Phillips screws. I'm going to pull apart the other Game Gears, and then we can do a comparison of which boards we have, the condition they're in, and things like that. One interesting thing to note on these original shells, I'm pretty sure this one was a reshell. The first one we took apart was a reshell at some point of its life. But on these original shells, you can see on the Sega sticker the model number 2110. That's almost always going to be a VA1. If you see 2110K, that's going to be a VA4. And if you see a 2110G, that's going to be a VA5. The BIOS was a little different in the later models, and the picture type changed a little bit too, but it's looking good here. These 2110s are exactly what we want, the VA1 models. Now, on the board, there's a couple of differences per model. There's a 1 ASIC chip or a 2 ASIC chip, but we'll get into that when we get them all torn apart. With the boards exposed, we can see the difference between a Model 1 with these two chips here and a Model 2 with single chip. The capacitor values between the two are actually the same. The Model 2 has an extra capacitor down here, but we're going to stick with the Model 1 for now and just make life simpler. So for the rest of this video, I'm only talking about the VA1, the Model 1. All right, with this main board out, I can kind of show you the capacitors we're going to replace and that come in this capacitor kit that was sent to me by Handheld Legend. The capacitors in this kit are newer style capacitors. They're slightly different from the older ones that were used on this board. The ones on this board that you're looking for are these square capacitors. They're square rectangle capacitors here. I'm gonna have an image that shows, kind of breaks them all down for you, shows you where they're at, and then also kind of give you a list of their values and everything too. So cool thing about buying a kit is everything you need comes in it. You'll see here in this kit, it also comes with these audio capacitors. So these audio capacitors are a little different. This is the audio board. I am not going to be changing out the audio board or the power board capacitors because these are going to actually get replaced when I get to the point of modifying that part of the system. We're going to actually update the audio and put a rechargeable power setup in here. Thanks again to Handheld Legend. So I am going to go ahead and desolder each of these capacitors. The best way to do it that I've been able to find is, you'll notice here, let's see if I can show you a better zoomed in picture. So the legs are on the side here, and they go straight down onto the board. The best way to do it is to just put your heat here on the legs and lift up and lift out the capacitor. I have tweezers that are normally closed so they can actually pinch onto the capacitor. And then I'm just going to add heat to the legs and lift up gently. So there are legs on this capacitor, but they're not through hole like a typical, like more modern capacitors you see this style. The legs are actually folded under, and it's actually a surface mount capacitor. So if you look on the board where we removed it, you'll see the 2 points here. That's our positive and negative for each leg. This section here, this is adhesive that was underneath the capacitor, so nothing to worry about there. So you want to be careful and not pull these pads up. And what we're going to have to do is take this new style capacitor with the legs. We're going to basically bend the legs to fit pretty much in there the way this was. We're probably going to fold them over and have them sit just on it, but we'll get there in a few minutes. What I'm going to do first is go ahead and remove all these capacitors. Since I have some good images that show me the placement, the orientation, where everything goes, I feel comfortable taking off. If you're not comfortable doing this type of thing, just do one at a time. Doing one at a time is totally awesome. I've done plenty like that. I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to get confused. So just do one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and pull them all off, and then I'll probably end up breaking out the microscope so we can get a better image of what we're doing and how we're going back with the new caps onto the board. As I'm taking off these capacitors, I want to give you a couple of tips to kind of help you along the way. Number one is don't force anything, okay? If you look, see if I can give you a good view here. If you look down here, these are the legs down underneath. Those legs are soldered to pads on top of the board. Those pads will come up if you put too much pressure, or if you add too much heat for too long of a time. Those pads will come up, okay? And it's just a pain to get fixed. You really don't want to have to deal with that. So the way I go about it is I'll take a small, either an X-Acto blade or a flathead screwdriver, and I'll go on the opposite side of the legs, and I'll try to just pry up just a little bit, just to try to break free that adhesive that's under there. Once you break free that adhesive, now you've got a little bit of room to play here. So with that up, if I can get you a good shot of this. So with that up, see, we can get to those legs and that pad a lot easier, okay? The second tip is you need to turn the temperature up on your soldering iron. I have mine set right now at 830. I could see going, a little bit higher. With the high heat, you don't want to hold it on there too long. But this old solder that they used is not very friendly. It needs high heat to melt and get away from here. So you're going to need a higher temperature to help you along. Lower temperature, you're going to end up pulling too hard and it's going to damage those pads. So keep your temperature turned up. Don't hold the heat on it too long. Don't be afraid to take a break. If one's giving you problems, move on to a different one and then come back. That's the best way to do it. All right, let's see here if I can get in there a little bit. All right. The next tip is that your soldering iron, it needs to be super clean. Okay, so I've got some crud on there. I use my wire brush, or you can use a wet sponge if you want. And I want to make sure I have a nice clean solder tip. And then I'm going to put a little bit of fresh solder on the tip just to give it something to burn. Okay. Now back on. This is going to be a little difficult with trying to record it, but what I want to try to do is give you that good indication. Try to give you a good view of what's happening. All right, so I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to put them on the capacitor just to give a little bit of pressure, and then I'm going to attempt to melt one side of the leg. Let me see here. I got to figure out how I can do this. Melt it. That might be the best angle right there. All right, so I know it's off center, but here's our capacitor. Here's the legs down underneath that we're going to desolder. You see this here? You see this corrosion? This is all from this capacitor. These leaky capacitors get on here and they do serious damage over time. Good thing we're getting them. Hopefully it's not too late. All right, so did you see that? You see how nice and smooth that came up? We just touched it to it and we rolled it out of the way, okay? Now again, don't want to put too much pressure on the other leg, but now if you see my soldering iron, there's junk all over that from that old solder, little bits of the capacitor, everything. So I clean off the tip of my soldering iron really good, add a little bit of fresh solder, and then I can move over to this other leg, just touch it to it, a little bit of rocking, and it's off. All easy, good to go. See how those legs are bent down under there, but you see like a lot of some of the casing melted off onto my iron, so that's going to happen it's just it's unavoidable. But when you go back to move on to the next solder point, try to keep that soldering iron clean. Now I will clean up those solder points with a little bit of alcohol. Get this corrosion out of here too while I'm in here. Hopefully the capacitors that have been leaking onto this board have not caused any serious damage. That would be a shame, but this is why we have to do this on these older Game Gears. All right, and the last thing I like to do is take some fresh solder. If there's a large amount of solder on here remaining, which actually that's pretty decent, I will try to remove as much of that old solder as possible, because it's not very friendly. Doesn't like mixing with the newer solder that we use today. So I'm going to take a little bit of solder wick and a little bit of flux. We'll get that off of there. See, the solder wick just absorbs. When you put a little bit of flux on the wick, man, the solder just, it adheres to it really, really well. And now you can see our pads there, super clean, ready for fresh solder. So we'll clean off any residue that was left. And then I like to add a little bit of fresh solder over each pad, because, you know, it's exposed to the elements. It could, you know, there's possibilities for corrosion and everything like that. And it's going to be a little bit before I get my other cap on here. We'll just put a little bit of fresh solder down, just like that, and it's ready for when we come back with our capacitor. But yeah, I got one more to do. I'm going to get this one off of here, and then we'll start the process of putting them all back on. Okay, without a doubt, now that we have all of our caps pulled off and we've cleaned up the points and I've added fresh solder, it's time to go back with the new capacitors. Again, these capacitors have a little different form factor, but they're going to go in basically the same way. Without a doubt, this C31 capacitor up here next to this power connector is one of the most difficult ones to get in. It's such a pain, but it's okay. We're going to get there, no problemo. This C31, it's 100 microfarad, 6.3 volt capacitor. Remember, on capacitors, the negative leg of the capacitor is marked on the cap. And you want to double check that your size and your voltage, your capacitance and your voltage is correct for the one where it's going in place. 6.3 volt, 100 microfarad. So the best way to do this one in particular is to kind of get it just laid out there. We're basically going to end up installing it about just like that. I want to keep the capacitor kind of towards this end so it gives me some legs to work with. And then once I see about where it's going to fall into place, I'll trim these legs off and start bending them in the right way to get them in place. I want to show you what I do to orient the capacitors. I guess the best I can to try to get as flush of a fit as I can. All right, now that I have it oriented like this, the legs come out of the center of the capacitor, right? If you were to draw a line on the diameter of the circle, that's where the legs come out. But what we want is we actually want the legs to be flush with the bottom of the capacitor, because that's how they're going to sit on the board when we're redoing these surface mounts. So the first thing I do, holding it in the right orientation to where negative is going to go in just the way it is, I get myself a pair of pliers, and these are small needle nose pliers. I don't even know where I got these. I've had these for so long.
But the cool thing about them is they're flat.
They have very tight tolerance in the middle, and they're smaller too. I could even go with actually a little smaller ones than these, but these are the ones I have available. I will look for a pair that would work really well for this, and I'll put a link in the description. But holding the capacitor in the orientation, the first thing I do is I take and I bend down the legs toward where the board will be, right? Not all the way, just kind of at a good angle like that. Then I take my pliers and I grab the legs and I rotate them up to try to keep that angle bend, but then have them running straight out. And the tighter tolerance that you can keep to the base of the capacitor itself, the tighter the tolerance is going to be on the board. So we take that there, right? And I get both legs together and I just rotate out, kind of keeping pressure towards the capacitor. You can line it up on your board, determine how far your legs are going to go. I usually try to trim, start cutting them long, right? So I'll trim it, about here, and then work my way back towards the capacitor just to get a nice tight fit in there where it needs to go. That's the way I do these capacitors on top. The more pre-work you do before you actually get in there solder, if you just solder it in and then try to bend it in place, it can be done, but this really helps you out with your fitment if you take the time to do this before you solder them in. All right, and there it is. First one down, 12, I think 12 more to go. All right, the power supply board is quite a bit simpler. It's just these three capacitors here, and they're through capacitors. So we just desolder each of these points, install the new capacitors, easy peasy. They do come in the kit. I am not going to be doing that in this video because Handheld Legend actually sent me a new power section that includes a rechargeable power circuit that we're going to end up using. So like I said, very simple here. You desolder each point, pull the cap out, throw the new ones in. Make sure you pay attention to the polarity. You can see that they're marked, the polarity is marked on each capacitor. The negative side is marked. Make sure you stick to the same, and you're good to go. The audio board is without a doubt the most difficult thing. It's the most difficult part of this build to recap. And it's so difficult that unless you have a really nice rework station, but even then, it is a pain in the butt doing these surface mount capacitors. These are the capacitors that we're changing, or that you would change. The best way to do it is with hot air, like a hot air reflow. But to be perfectly honest, there are options out there right now where you can get an upgraded version of this board that gives you such better, higher quality audio. In my opinion, it's 100% worth it to just scrap this board and go with one of the aftermarket options that are out there. I do not recommend trying to do these. If I have done them before, I am able to do them. They take an extremely long amount of time, and for me, it's just not worth the effort, especially when I'm doing the mod for someone else. The audio quality that you get from the aftermarket things that are out there now is so much better. However, with all that said, if you do want to attempt to do it, I'm going to show you the kit does come with the capacitors that you need. It's only two types of capacitors. These larger capacitors are 100 microfarads, and the smaller capacitors are 47 microfarads. The bottoms of the capacitors look like this. You can see, you can kind of see. Let's see if I can get my focus a little better here. Yeah, there we go. So you can see these points here, these pins are what solder to the board. You need to be careful that you keep your orientation correctly. The capacitors are marked. This dark side here is the negative side of the capacitor. Make sure that it lines up with the negative side. And most of your capacitors, the positive pin is marked on each of these, the positive. Okay. So the best way to get at it is, like I said, is with hot air. You just hit it with hot air and it will come loose. And then you need to retin your points, add some flux, and hot air the new component back into place. You can use an iron. You can actually get an iron in there because you can see from the side here. Make sure I'm showing you the right thing. So you can see from the side here that a little bit of the pin is exposed, right? Problem is it's not much surface area, and you need your heat to flow to melt the whole solder so that you make a good connection. So you can sit here and heat up this side and then lift it up just a bit and then move over to the other side. The problem is that if you put too much heat on it for too long, or if you pry too early, you're going to mess up the pads on the board. I've done it before. Everybody that's done a Game Gear has done it. It is truly horrible. When people talk about recapping a Game Boy, this is the thing that those of us that have done it all have nightmares about. So again, Handheld Legend, who's sponsoring this video, was awesome and sent us a new audio board that we're going to install. I'm going to leave a link to it down in this description, even though we're not going to go into the installation of that in this video. It's going to be in a future video, probably in the next week or two. I still want you guys to have it in case you are at this point in your builds and you want to press forward. I highly recommend this setup that Handheld Legend sells. And that's how you install a full cat kit on a Sega Game Gear. The step is a must if you're restoring one or troubleshooting one of your own. The very first step I say is get those old electrolytic caps out of there and start fresh. So this was part one in kind of it's probably going to be a 3 or 4 part series where we go through and build the ultimate Game Gear. Big thanks to Handheld Legend once again for sending me all the parts to complete this build. If you need any parts to do Game Gear your own or work on any handheld or console, I highly recommend them. I've been using them for years. They're a great company. Shipping times are excellent, and they have great tons of options in stock for whatever project you're working on. In the next video, we're going to move on. We're probably going to do a new screen. We're going to end up removing this compact fluorescent and start the build, start really putting everything together with some of the other parts they sent me. So stick around for that, and we'll see you in the next one.